Okay, we've got a precise word or word in context problem. Rejecting the premise that the literary magazine Ebony and Topaz should present a unified vision of Black American identity, editor Charles Johnson fostered his contributors' diverse perspectives by promoting their authorial autonomy. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but their autonomy is their ability to choose their own perspectives, the diverse. So he's promoting diversity, whereas others are promoting a unified vision. Okay, this seems to be the difference. Johnson's self-effacement diverged, so he's promoting diversity, so he diverged from the editorial stances of W.B. Du Bois and Alain Locke to other, obviously, editors for other famous magazines or artists whose decisions for their publications were more, well, they would have been more unified, right? Charles Johnson is diverse, so these guys would have been unified, would be my guess. Okay, so what is that? Proficient, dogmatic, ambiguous, unpretentious. Well, at first blush, it might be, none of them seem to fit, right? Proficient means how good and skilled you are. That's not it. Ambiguous is vague. That's not anything related to unified. Unpretentious. Well, pretentious means, you're highfalutin. You think highly of yourself. So you're unpretentious means you're down to earth. You're not very, self-centered. That's not really the idea here, though. Dogmatic. Dogmatic is, you may not know what it means, but given the others are wrong, you should come to dogmatic as a conclusion. Don't eliminate something you don't know. Dogmatic means you have a definite, clear vision and you stick to it. You're dogmatic about it. That would be an extreme version of a unified vision. So the others have a dogmatic vision, whereas Johnson is diversified. He's different. He's varied. B is the correct answer. Okay, another precise word or word in context. Some economic historians blank that late 19th and early 20th century households in the United States experienced an economy of scale when it came to food purchases. So they thought, maybe, I don't know, something like thought that late 19th, early 20th century households experienced an economy of scale for food. They assumed, so let's look for a word clue that is better than that. They assumed that large households spent less on food per person than did small households. So they assumed, they thought, they assumed, maybe they, hypothesized or concluded. I'll just put in hypothesized for now. If you assume, hypothesis is better than an assumption. It's more than a thought. So economist Trevin Lowe showed, however, that a close look at the available data disproves this supposition. Okay, so hypothesized, thought, assumed, surmised. Yeah, when you surmise, you kind of conclude something, kind of like a hypothesis that you show to be true. So this might well be it. Let's just check the others. Contrived, that's to make up. That's not the idea. They didn't make up that households had economies of scale with food purchasing. That's artificially created. That's not the idea. They questioned. They weren't really questioning, right? Because they were assuming. Assuming is not questioning. They regretted. No, regretted is decidedly negative. So a lot of times on these word and context, one thing to do is play positive, negative. Some words are positive or negative, and this one's too negative, so I know it's wrong. Surmise. Surmise is going to be the correct answer. They deduced, they surmised that economies of scale applied to food purchases of households. Now, it turned out that was not necessarily a correct supposition, but surmised is the best answer. Okay, this one is most logical and precise. So it's a word in context where we have to be logical as well, okay? So economist Marco Castillo and colleagues showed that nuisance costs, well, what are those? Annoying costs? The time and effort people must spend to make donations. So, all right, that's what it is. If you have to put in time and effort to make donations, that reduces charitable giving. Well, yeah, if it's annoying to donate, then you're going to give less. You're going to donate less. Charities can reduce or mitigate this effect by compensating donors for nuisance costs. But those costs, though variable, are largely blank donation size, are largely correlated to donation size, unrelated to donation size, not sure exactly here. So charities that compensate donors will likely favor attracting a few large donors over many small donors. So they'll compensate the big guys. They won't really compensate everyone. So that's going to favor large donation sizes. So though variable, they are largely independent of donation size. Well, there's the answer, independent of donation size. I think that's going to be the right idea. Let's just check. Supplemental. So in addition to, though variable, they are largely supplemental or addition to donation size. No, that's not the right idea. Predictive of donation size? No. The nuisance costs, if you pay for them, that is not the same as predicting the amount of donations, the size of the donation. Subsumed in. Okay, you may not know what subsumed in, survives, exists in. This is not going to be right? So even if I'm uncertain of this meaning, I know independent is the right idea. The donation sizes are largely independent, or the nuisance costs are largely independent of donation size. That should be the right idea here. Seminole Muskogee director Sterling Harjo blank television's tendency to situate native characters in the distant past. So director Harjo, not clear here. He accepted, revered, not sure. We're going to have to keep reading to get an idea here. Notice I'm not going to the answer choices yet. So a typical student approach is to plug in answers. That gives you something that sounds good, not necessarily the right meaning in context. So I avoid doing that. I like to find synonyms and predict those synonyms first, or play positive, negative, or use other techniques, but then I'll plug in last, really. Okay? So, all right, so Seminole, Stephen Harling, blank television's tendency to situate native characters in the distant past. This rejection. Aha, that's the word we're looking for. So this is a pronoun that refers back to what we're talking about here, the missing word. So it's a rejection. So Seminole's director Sterling Harjo rejected television's tendency to situate native characters in the distant past. Colon, an example or an explanation. This rejection is evident in his series Reservation Dogs. Okay, so what's the word for rejection? Repudiate. Repudiate is to reject, right? Proclaim is to call out. That's not it. Foretell is to tell the future. He's not telling the future. And recant means to pull back or unsay what you already said. So he's not doing that. He's just simply rejecting. He's repudiating. That's the right word in context. The following text is adapted from George Eliot's 1871 novel Middlemarch. Okay, this is again a word in context, but here we have a variation. We want to know, what does the word contracted most nearly mean? And that's underlined here. So Mr. Book had traveled in his younger years and was held in this part of the country to have contracted a too rambling habit of mind. So contract is like to make an agreement. To made an agreement to have a too rambling habit of mind. Mr. Brooks' conclusions were as difficult to predict as the weather. So he was difficult to predict, his conclusions. So he had too rambling of a mind. Rambling means to be wandering on, so he didn't have predictable conclusions. He rambled along. So he created or developed a rambling habit of mind. Restricted? No, not restricted. Described? No, he was held this part of the country to have described a too rambling habit of mind. No, he's not describing something because he actually was difficult to predict. He developed, there we go. He developed a too rambling habit of mind. And that's why he was difficult to predict. He settled to, no, one doesn't settle on that. That's not the right word in context. C, developed.